The verbs for our Creole surprised me with an interesting challenge. But before we get into that, I want to address one quick criticism. If during my videos you've wanted to ask, where's the science? Just remember this is all conjecture and speculation. This is a thought experiment. And some of my choices are simply because I said so, not based in a theory of historical linguistics. And I mentioned last time that we would need to tackle word order since French is subject, verb, object, and Malagasy is verb, object, subject. It really comes down to ease. For the moment, at least, SVO is what we're going to assume right now, but this could change down the line. The Malagasy practice of beginning with the verb or focus of the sentence and not the subject may affect the necessity of including the subject at all. But that's a bigger question than we're ready for just yet. In order to develop a working verb system for our Creole speakers, we need to see how verbs work in the base languages. Remember, we're only looking at the verbs. Thankfully, Malagasy isn't overly complicated. The three main tenses, present, past, and future, are formed with prefixes. M is present, N is past, and H is future. So one verb stem can easily be conjugated. Mi vidi, ni vidi, he vidi. So just note there are no auxiliary verbs, no have, no be. We prefer prefixes here over suffixes. And we're not going to worry about the perfect or the progressive or the subjunctive or all the other tenses right now. That's just at a whole other level. Let's just focus on present, past, and future. Just a reminder from our last video, and this will also show the pattern we're going to follow for the past and the future. The present tense in French has 6 different endings on the verbs depending on which subject we're talking about. And I've chosen to use the imperative form, since this is the form I assume Malagasy speakers would be hearing the most of, as the base present tense form with all 6 pronouns. The past tense in French requires helping verbs, have or be, depending on the verb, and the past participle form of the verb, which ends in an E, an I, or U, again, depending on the verb. You have to conjugate the helping verb for the appropriate subject and then form the participle, all the while keeping in mind number and gender. Jeesh, right? Well, to complicate things even further, the future can be structured in 2 ways. Setting aside their differences in relation to time, the first way uses subject-specific suffixes. That's our tongue twister of the day. Subject-specific suffixes, subject-specific suffixes, subject-specific suffixes. Ugh. And the other is more similar to the past, but the helping verb is to go, and we maintain the infinitive. Because of what we said before about prioritizing prefixes over suffixes, we're just going to toss the first one out. And look at what we're left with, conjugating the verb to go. So our question here is, if you were not a native French speaker, but you needed to pick up the grammar from immersion alone, what features would be picked up and which would disappear? 2 specific challenges to note. We have already realized the je as our first person pronoun, so we can't expect it to carry tense as well. Also, 6 conjugations per verb just isn't going to happen. There is no way that second language speakers are going to collect these, at least in an efficient enough manner, to apply them in all situations correctly. Being an English teacher and seeing students try to apply our much smaller inventory of verb conjugations, I can tell you there's no way they're going to gather 6 of them. 2 is hard enough. We do, however, have one big thing going for us. For the most part, the French participle, infinitive, and the imperative, which we used for the present tense, are usually pronounced the same. It's like French has already leveled itself, weeding out redundant or unnecessary phonemes, like it's a science or something. So our Creole base verbs can be surmised from the present tense. This is fairly simple for a lot of regular verbs. Toss out the varying E, I, or U endings, and here's what we get. Danser, danse. Courir, courir. But irregular verbs will need a little more thought, mostly by putting them through the phonological adjustments made in previous videos. For the past and future, we're going to stick with the vous form. If the Malagasy are being spoken to en masse, which is why the imperative was chosen for the present tense, it makes sense they may be most exposed to the second person plural. And because Malagasy speakers are accustomed to prefixes, that's what we'll get. Ave and ale will be reinterpreted as the prefixes ve and le. Some example sentences here. Nous avevate a meso, ile la prende lise, je ve bierano, tu le cure. Thanks for watching, everybody. Like, subscribe, leave a comment. I'm asking this time to use my rules and create some sentences. Create some new vocabulary. Write a full story. I mean, something small. Let's just see what we can do. Work with me here. Let's see how interesting this can get. See you next time.